Hey guys, welcome back. I'm John Correa. Today, I will show you how I painted this beautiful early winter morning landscape. That magical moment where the snow is just about to completely cover the grass. We will begin with those light, pastel muted colors in the background and work our way toward the deeper, more detailed foreground. The full 1-hour tutorial of this painting is available on my Patreon, including the complete color mixing process. You can watch the full version over there. And if you want to purchase this painting, along with my other originals, it's now available on my website. Links down below. Also, my brushes is currently on Christmas Flash promo. If you purchase one until December 3, that's tomorrow, by the time this video goes up, you can add 2 more sets on your cart for free. What? Just make sure to apply the discount code CRAFTAMO3O upon checkout. Hurry, this is until tomorrow only. I'll put the link down below. Alright, so grab your paints and brushes, let's dive in, and I'll see you in the next video. So these are the brushes we'll be using today. Number 6 flat brush for broad stroke, especially for the sky and mountains. The number 0 stiff fan brush for bigger pine trees to achieve those natural textured shapes. And then 00 small round brush and number 0 angle brush for finer details and finishing touches. So let's squeeze out the acrylic, starting with primary blue, deep green permanent, primary red, cadmium yellow medium, titanium white, and Mars black. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab our number 6 flat brush and start creating a base layer for the entire canvas. I'm just throwing in these colors, keeping everything really loose, but I want the tonal value to already be close to what we're painting today. So on the upper part of the canvas, we're gonna keep these lighter tones for the sky and the mountains. Then as we move down toward the bottom, I'm shifting into slightly darker tones where the trees and grass will sit later on. This just to give us a really nice base and help the upcoming layers turn out opaque and solid right away. It makes the whole painting feel more grounded before we start building the details. Then after that, I'm gonna start mixing the colors we need for the sky and those layers of mountains. Since we're aiming for a morning light, I want the colors here to be light and pastel. Just soft, gentle tones. That's a really important fundamental. Everything that sits farther away should have lighter tonal values. It helps push the distance and gives us that quiet morning atmosphere. So I'm gonna prepare light yellow, some peach, light muted purple, muted cool blues, and also slightly darker muted purple for the distant pine trees. So once that first layer is totally dry, we can now move on to the next. We're gonna start in brushing in this light yellow, moving the flat brush horizontally, then blending in this light peach. I'm just softly blending them together, letting each color melt into the next. Really gentle, almost like you're brushing in early sunlight. Then as we move down, we'll start layering the slightly darker tones to build up those mountain shapes. And you can already see how that base layer underneath is helping. Everything sits easier and the colors feel more natural right away. And because of that, we're not really focusing on making everything super solid. The base layer already did that job for us. So we can focus more on making every blend feel nice and soft, letting those transitions breathe a little. That's what will help us achieve that distant atmospheric effect. Then using my angle brush, using the darker tones, we will start suggesting those distant pine trees with simple up and down strokes. Since we still want them to feel far away, this little motion is enough to keep everything soft and hazy, almost like they're melting into the morning light. And as we move a bit closer to the scene, we will switch to the darker tones and make the pine trees slightly taller. Just that small change pushes them closer to the viewer and adds a nice sense of depth across the landscape. And since these trees are a bit closer to us, we can start adding more details using our small round brush. Just tapping in a little foliage here and there, Nothing too heavy, but keeping the strokes a little more defined compared to the distant ones, but still soft enough so they blend into the landscape naturally. At this point, we're really starting to build the depth and contrast. You'll notice the tones getting darker, the shapes becoming a bit more defined, and everything slowly coming forward. And we're gonna push this even further once we reach the foreground. That's where the deepest darks live and where all the finest little details belong. So next, I'm gonna prepare the mid-tone layer for the grass. Something mid-green color. Not too dark and not too light. We're also gonna mix subtle highlight for the distant pine trees. Just a gentle muted green where the light is catching them. Then on the other end of the spectrum, I'm also gonna prepare the darkest value for the biggest pine trees in the foreground. That's gonna be our deepest contrast in the whole painting. The moment where the foreground really anchors the scene and gives the entire landscape that strong, grounded feeling. So let's begin by blocking in our middle ground and foreground with this nice flat green mix. I'm not doing anything too precise here, just broad, confident strokes with a flat brush. Keeping it loose and giving ourselves something solid to build all those texture and details later. Then using our small 00 round brush, I'm gonna start highlighting these tiny distant pine trees. I'm just doing small taps and little flicks, really delicate touches. And I'm only focusing on the left side of each tree, where that soft morning sunlight is hitting. I don't want to overdo it, just enough sparkle to show that the light is gently catching those branches and leaves. These tiny highlights help the tree separate from the background without losing that hazy, faraway feeling, making these distant pine trees a bit more dimensional without adding too much detail. And then using our fan brush, I'm loading it thick on both sides of the bristles with these darker tones. Then I'll start gently shaping the foliage of these bigger pine trees in the middle ground and foreground. For the upper part of the tree, I'm just using the corner edge of the fan brush, soft, light pressure taps. And as I move down, I'm widening the branches a bit, making them feel fuller and heavier, so we can get that natural cone or triangular shape that pine tree always have. I'm not rushing this part, just letting each tap build up that texture slowly, giving the trees a nice rich presence in the scene. And since we're working with darker tones here, this is where the depth really starts to lock in. These trees become the anchors of the foreground, adding that strong contrast and helping the whole scene feel grounded and alive. Then after that, we're gonna prepare the colors for the snow. Those cool blues for the shadowed areas, and a warm highlight mix for the parts that are being hit by direct sunlight. We're also gonna prepare a few variations of yellow greens for the grass highlights, just to bring some warmth and movement into the land. And also a nice magenta color for the little flowers in the foreground. Just a small pop of life to brighten everything up. These touches of color will really help balance the scene and guide the eye through all the layers we have built. So going back to our angle brush, starting with this cool blue for the snow. Another important thing to remember here, if you want this to feel realistic in terms of perspective, especially since these are just patches of snow and not fully covered field, you really have to control the thickness of each patch. The ones farthest away, right near the horizon, should be very thin. And as you move closer to the foreground, that's where the snow starts to look thicker and fuller. That shift in thickness is what tells the distance. Anything far away gets compressed, the shapes get smaller, flatter, or lighter. And then as those forms come toward us, they expand, they open up, and they carry more weight, which what really creates that sense of space in the scene. Then with some dark green, let's start laying some shadows in the grass before we move on to the highlights. This step really helps the highlights later feel more convincing because the contrast is already there. It gives the ground a bit more shape and makes everything feel like it has weight and direction before we brighten it up. So make sure to clean your brush before we switch to the brighter color. And with this light yellow peach, almost white mix, I'm gonna start highlighting the snow. I'm focusing mainly around the middle ground. That's where the sunlight is hitting more directly. I'm just laying these soft strokes on top, letting the light gently sit on the surface. And by keeping some areas in shadow, it gives the snow a really moody, early morning feeling. That quiet moment before the sun fully warms everything up. I love this part because the contrast between the cool shadows and the warm highlights really brings the landscape to life. So going back to our small round brush, I'm gonna add a bit of snow sitting on the branches of these foreground pine trees. Just light touches here and there, matching the same patchy snow we have on the ground. This also helps the pine trees feel less flat. It adds texture, a bit of weight, and it ties the whole scene together so everything feels like it belongs in the same chilly, peaceful moment. And then with these yellow greens, I'm gonna start highlighting the grass in the distance. Just gently gliding the brush across. Nothing too detailed here. Just want a soft suggestion of light catching the grass, enough to give the sense of depth without pulling too much attention away from the foreground. Then another layer of highlight on the snow. Make it really thick, almost like a real snow sitting on the canvas. It gives the snow that soft, fluffy look, like it's actually resting on top of the landscape instead of bending flat into it. Then going back to the grass, using the darkest mix on the palette to deepen those shadows even more. So when you apply the grass highlights and the flowers in a minute, it will stand out beautifully. It's a nice way to make the whole foreground pop without overworking the details. Just tiny strokes here and there, enough to create deeper contrast. Then going back to the yellow greens, let's start applying the highlights on the grass. I'm just doing quick little flicks to suggest those thin blades catching the light. No heavy pressure here, just really gentle touches. Because if you press too hard, we'll end up with thick chunky blades, and we don't want that. And since we're now working on the closest elements in the painting, this is really where we should put more effort in creating the details. The foreground is what the viewer's eye lands on first, so giving it those sharper textures and cleaner strokes helps the whole piece feel more finished and alive. Everything up here deserves a bit more attention. The little blades of grass, subtle highlight on the shadowed snow. All those subtle highlights, they all work together to make the painting feel rich and real. It's like the finishing touch that ties everything together, soft in the back, gentle in the middle, and beautifully defined right here in the front. And we will finish things up by placing a few flowers in the foreground. Just tapping them in gently, like blobs of paint, so they feel like little bursts of color popping through the grass. And these tiny flowers do so much for the composition. They break up the greens, they guide the eye, and they add that quiet charm that makes the foreground feel lively without being too busy. It's a simple touch, but really completes the story of the landscape, like the ground is waking up in the morning light right along with everything else.